Hello, everybody. So today we are having Mr. Tola Ogunlewe. Sorry if I didn't pronounce the name well. Sir is a lawyer with a background in sports and litigation. He is a sports performance coach to young athletes. So getting the what he does most is he gets the best out of athletes using simple physiology tools, physical training, strategic planning, and pure hard works. And he is also the founder and the host of the Athletes Maestro podcast that have featured a lot of bright minds. I have followed up your podcast and it's mind blowing. I'm telling you, with over 900 episodes of mind blowing content. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure and a privilege of mine to have Mr. Tola in the house. Welcome very much, sir. I'm very, very happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you for your long introduction. Some of those things I don't even know. I don't even know about them. But thank you.
It's so nice to have you, sir. It's so nice to have you because actually, yeah, I have a list of questions I've already written down,
Oh, that's
and it's going to be, there are some of them that were sent to me by our community because I told them, okay, we will be having this person. Most of them went and did your research and they were really, really excited to be having you right here. And some of these questions so I really I'm looking forward to this. So Saka, let's just go into this immediately because I know you are so busy and you have a meeting after now also. So the first questions we have right here is that because as a performance coach, we want to know. So by the end of every game, a player will always be assessed by their performance. Then, as a performance coach, what are the basic criteria you use in assessing a player? Also, in terms of high level performance, how can a player perform at high level?
So that's like a two-in-one question, And
Yes, sir.
if we start out with the first question that you asked, you see, and this is where at least I'm guessing that your community are footballers, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right. This is where an understanding of the game comes in, right? Because you see athletes or you see footballers who are looking for general templates. So in terms of, okay, can you tell me something that works for all footballers, and then I can apply it to my own game or to what exactly I'm doing. But it doesn't work that way. You see, each player, just like you have each coach, have certain things that they look out for. So if you are talking about after a particular game or after a session or after a tournament or whatever it is, you want to assess performance. So you're assessing performance in two ways, right? Performance as it relates to you and the expectations you have of yourself, and then performance as it relates to the coach on whose team you are playing for, right? You cannot be playing for, let me use popular examples. You cannot be playing for someone like Mourinho and then you expect the appraisal or you expect the review of someone like Jurgen Klopp. It just doesn't work. So and what that means is that the things that would impress somebody like Mourinho are not the things that would impress somebody like Jurgen Klopp. The things that would impress Jurgen Klopp are not the things that would impress somebody like Mourinho, right? So you have to have that basic understanding. And this is where, like I always say, the business understanding of sports is, right? So there are three things that every athlete must focus on. You must focus on the mental aspect, you must focus on the physical aspects, you must focus on the business aspects of sports. This is part of the business aspects. Engaging with your coach, finding out what performance means to them. How do they like their players playing? What are the results they are looking to achieve? All of those things are what gives you the tools to work on. And I'll give you a perfect example. A perfect example is Alex Iwobi at Everton, right? All the previous managers that have been at Everton, I mean, he plays either as a winger or as a number 10. But this is a new manager who comes in, right? And of course, Alex Iwobi realizes that, look, I need to do something different to remain on this team. So what did he do? Engage with the coach. This is what this coach likes. These are the type of performances the coach expects of me, right? And he adapted his game to fit that. And there's no Everton team sheet that you will look at today that he won't be number one on that list as a starter.
Yes, sir.
When it looked like he was
Yes,
almost
sir.
out the door, right? So that's
Yes, sir.
number one. So there's no general template of, oh, this is what would determine whether you've had an excellent performance.
A good performance,
right?
Yeah.
What do you expect of yourself? That's one. Two, the coach that you're playing for, what do they expect of them? So that handles part one of your question, right? The second part of your question for me, which is, oh, as a sports performance coach, what am I looking for? Don't forget that the work that I do is to help that athlete perform the best they can perform. So if you perform better in one game than you did in the previous game, you're making progress. And that's impressive, right? Which is why there should always be a baseline. You see, as an athlete, you should always have a baseline. So baseline meaning that under any circumstance whatsoever, I'm not informed, I am ill, I'm not match fit, I'm having issues outside of sports that are affecting my performance, I can never perform below this particular level, right? And that's why you see for a lot of these superstars that we idolize and all of that, the ones that have truly reached the peak, you will never see them perform below a particular level. So if they're going to grade their performances over the course of their career, at least up until the point when they became elite, right?
Yes, sir.
They would never perform below a 5/10, right? That's their baseline. So certain times they can be 10/10. I mean, you look at someone like Messi, for example. Yes, Messi is Messi, but at least in recent memory, anybody can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, sir.
I don't think there has been any time he has been substituted from a game because he wasn't performing well.
No, never. I can't remember. There's never.
If he's ever been substituted, probably he was injured or
injury, or you want to.
So you always have to have a baseline. And the problem with a lot of players and athletes, this is not just targeted at football now, is that you don't have baselines, right? You don't have a baseline. So you're just going out there, you're just performing, whatever happens, whatever you see, whatever it is. No. And that's the expectation you have of yourself. So as a performance coach, for example, that's one of the things that I'm trying to identify with the athletes that I'm working with. What is your baseline? So that we can ensure that at no point in time do you go below that baseline. So that's why I said, look, you can be sick, you can be out of form, you can maybe you're not match fit. Those are things that happen on a normal day.
Yes, sir.
But irrespective of those things, your baseline, maybe it can't be worse than 3/10. It can't be worse than 4/10, right? So that is how I assess. So in the sense that we know the baseline we're working with, every performance that is above that baseline continuously is a step in the right direction. So to answer the two parts of your question.
Wow. If you observe how I've been looking sideways, out and on, it's because I've been writing. This is mind-blowing, because this information most players, and we are going to get to where we are going to come with the fact that I wanted to play before going into this, and these are the informations that never came across. I never had this. I never came across such informations like this. So it's really a big privilege. Now, so you were talking about having a baseline, because we're talking about performance and you're talking about your personal expectation and the coach expectation. So bringing down to the baseline, how can a player set up baseline? Because you have to understand baseline for you to be able to set a baseline for yourself. And for the grassroots coming up, most of them are not even exposed to understand that there's something like a baseline. There's an expectation, a benchmark you're setting for yourself to hit at a particular level, not to go below the level like you said, but always to progressively move above. So how can players actually set up a baseline for themselves?
So now that's simple, because I mean, thank God that in this day and age, you have access to information like you've never had before. You know, it wasn't back in the day where there were so many things you couldn't find. Now, obviously, every footballer has a position that they play, right? And
yes, sir.
Even though you play that position, you're aspiring to get to the top, right? You're aspiring to become a
yes, sir.
Yes, you know, let's say, okay, maybe you might not win all the accolades and everything, you know, expected in your sport, but at least you want to get, if not the highest level, close to the highest level. Now, look at all the players that are playing in your position. So you play as a right back, you play as a center back, you play as a striker, right? Look at all the players that are playing in your position, right? Now, you now grade those players based on the highest, right, and the lowest of that position. And I'll give you a perfect example. There are two ways that you can do this. I'll give you a perfect example. Now, what's his name? This French striker, Olivier Giroud, right? So recently broke Thierry Henry's record as the highest goal scorer in French.
Highest goal scorer for France.
When Giroud was 23 years old, Thierry Henry was a superstar in world football, right? So if anybody had told Giroud at the time that you're playing in the third division of French football, one day you're going to surpass the record of Thierry Henry, he would have told you that it's a lie, right?
It's impossible.
Why am I giving that example? You see, that 23-year-old Olivier Giroud, right, can be a baseline for anybody in terms of what were his performances like at that age, at that time. We've seen his progression. We've seen how he has gotten better, right? So we can use that one to say, okay, this is our baseline in terms of you can never perform as poorly as this. Then, of course, the highest would be his performance now. It's a little bit over his peak, right? So maybe you rewind maybe like 2-3 years ago when Giroud was. I'm just using this as an example. So the way that you set a baseline is either you're using your own performances that you've had in the past to say, okay, there was this particular game where I was the man of the match, I was the best player. All the coaches that attended that program, were talking about how amazing I was, how good I was, how this is this. That's my benchmark in terms of performance. And you have criteria to measure it by. In that game, I scored 2 goals. In that game, I had several impressive passes, several impressive touches. Basically, the feedback that the coaches were giving you on that particular game, right? You can use that as a baseline to say, hey, under no circumstance can I perform less than I performed at that game. So that's you using yourself as an example. You can then use, like I said, these guys that you watch on TV as your example as well, right? What's the worst game in the last 5 years? And you see, this is where you have to be a student of your sport. You see, a lot of people are lazy, right? And they want first-class results by giving fourth-class effort. That's what you find. That's what you find, right? You want first-class results.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Right? What you want?
Go back 5 years, right? Olivier Giroud's performance. Pick any athlete that it is. Where is one game that you feel like they were absolutely terrible in that game, like they didn't play well, right? Assess their performance from that game, and you can set yourself that type of baseline to say, under any circumstance, I must not do this. Now, the difficulty that athletes would have or footballers would have in applying this or in using this, right, is that they do not even understand the position that they play to that much detail, right? So if I'm telling you to go and watch Olivier Giroud's games last 5 years and all that, what do you know that you're looking for? If you don't understand fully the role of a striker, right, and all the different types of strikers that you have, your target man, your false nine, come up with all of that.
Supporting strikers and all the rest.
Exactly. If you don't understand that in detail, how are you supposed to set the baseline? How are you supposed to say? This is the least way that I can perform?
I should perform.
Right? So it's a combination of both, right? You can use yourself as a benchmark. You can use the superstar athletes that you watch as a benchmark. But the whole point of it is that you understand that position, so you know what you're looking out for. You know what to target.
Wow, this is amazing, sir. I'm really enjoying every bit of this section from the beginning and as we are going through. Now, sir, continue with the baseline, because this is very critical. It's more like a foundation in performance. If you have a baseline, it's going to aid your performance, because you are not going to go below that baseline as you've set it. But sometimes you can actually see some decline in players' performance. Sometimes you can see a player that will perform well in this game, and before you know, it goes down again, then comes up and down again. There's much like an inconsistency in performance. So what could really be the cause of that inconsistency in players' performance?
So that's a blanket question, and of course it would apply differently from player to player in different circumstances. But you see, one way, if I was going to term it, or if I was going to use a general example in terms of causes of lack of consistency, is the inability of the athletes, right, to achieve, quote unquote, what you would call like a state of flow, right? In the sense that you are so zoned in on your performance, what you're putting out, what you're doing, that it's almost like you're floating on air, so to speak. And that's why you see, for example, there was a time when what's this guy's name? Plays for Leicester, Jamie Vardy, right? He was on an absolute tear. I think this was maybe a few years ago or something, when he broke Vanessa's record.
I think 2016 when they won their league.
Yeah, exactly, something like that, right? So where he scored, I think he scored like 11 consecutive games or
consecutive.
Like
yes, he broke the record.
Exactly. That in that period, he was in a state of flow, right? And you see, the things that affect or the things that cause athletes, a lot of athletes, like I said, it's not. I'm just trying to be as general as possible, but it will be different from A to B. Is your inability to focus on the things that have gotten you there. So, say for example, you've been working so hard, right, for like a month. You've been training, you've been trying to get fit, you've been trying to ensure that your performances are up to scratch and all of that. And all of a sudden, you go into a game, you score 3 goals, right? One of the first things that you see most average athletes do is that they feel that they have arrived.
Right? Yes, sir. Ronaldo.
Yeah, they feel
I've become Ronaldo.
I scored 3 goals in this game. That's all. You see, what the elite athletes do is that they then go and sit down with that particular game, identify all the things that they did well, right? Identify the reason why they did those things well, and then they try to replicate it in the next game. When they're able to come close in that next game, they repeat the same process. They study that next game, try to identify things that they were able to do well, right? And then they try to repeat it for the next game. So it creates like this chain from performance to performance to performance to performance. But we all know that it's not possible over the course of a season or over the course of how many years to be consistent. No, right? Because I mean, certain things will happen. Like that's why I said, you might be out of form, you might be ill, maybe you're not fit, maybe there are certain things that are happening outside of sport that you're struggling with, family issues, you know, so many of those things can come up. But the whole point is that in order for that consistency, so that you're not up down performances, when you have performed well, what were the reasons that you performed well? Can you identify them? And that's why you see so many players. You have a fantastic game, right? You have a fantastic game. You've played absolutely well. The next thing they're doing is that they're carrying their bag, they're going home, they're going to celebrate, they're going to have fun. As opposed to sitting down with that game and trying to identify and find out how or why did I perform so well in that game, right? When I've done the debriefing, when I've looked at everything, I will go and celebrate. I mean, celebrate your wins. Nobody says you shouldn't do that. But not at the cost of identifying why you were able to perform the way that you performed.
Wow. And adding to that, I think the coaches also have to take cognizant notice of their players' performance, because especially when in the Western world, it's much more easier for you to analyze your game back when the games are recorded, when it's covered professionally, and you can go back and play it back and watch those moves that you are making. So, and I think for the grassroots coaches, especially coaches in our community, this is very, 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 very important that you take notice of your players' performance and try to brief them again what got them there, making them to understand what made them to get to that point of performance for them to keep going. I'm very, very excited about this. Thank you very much for those amazing points.
Let me
also next,
just wait before you go to the next. Let me add to this issue of this coach thing that you said. You know,
all right,
we we come from a place in Africa where it's very easy to blame other people when certain things don't happen the way we want them to happen, right? Now you see, the job of your coach, contrary to whatever belief it is that any athlete, the job of your coach, especially when you play a team sport, is not to improve you, the individual, is to improve the team. The coach is not keeping his job because his striker scored 25 goals or 30 goals that season. The coach is keeping his job because the team qualified for continental competitions. They won this amount of games. They won the cup competition in their country. So this idea that players always have that is the job of the coach to improve. The coach is focused on the team and not you. So if you sit down and you're waiting for one coach somewhere to come and tell you that, hey, you did. Now, there are coaches that are equipped for that, which means that they have the knowledge to do that in terms of building personal relationships with their players to get the best out of them. But that is not the duty of the coach, right? You're playing grassroots football, right? You have a friend who have family members that maybe support you. There will be somebody that you can say, I'm going to play this particular match. Can you come and watch? Can you identify this? You then give them the criteria, right? I want to know how many times I lost possession. I want to know how many times I made bad passes. I want to know how many times I shot at goal. So maybe you play as a striker or a midfielder, whichever one. You give them the criteria and says, identify all these things for me during this game. The person sits in the stands, the person watches with a sheet of paper and takes note of all these things. At the end of the game, you guys meet up and say, can I see the notes that you took? Oh, I misplaced my passes 10 times. I misplaced I only shot at goal twice. Because don't forget that you are in the heat of performance. You cannot have a third-person perspective of what you are doing. It's impossible. So you are now relying on a coach who is watching 11 players play to now tell you that you played as a striker, this is what you were able to do, right? That's absolutely impossible. So what it means is that you are going to remain, you're going to be waiting for that feedback for such a long time, and you're not going to make any progress. Do you understand? So just to address that point on the coaches that you mentioned before you go to
very I'm very happy I brought up that point because many would have still gone with this mentality, and thank God you're able to point out those, and it's wonderful. Thank you very much, sir. Okay, so next is I was listening to one of your of the episode in Athlete Maestro podcast with Dr. Scott Goldman on high level of intelligence. Was more talking on the subject matter of athletic intelligence for athletes. That was the subject matter, and one of the major points he noted was that people of higher level of intelligence will do much more in a lesser time frame to get to a place of mastery. So in other words, athletic intelligence helps save time and accelerate high level of performance. So the question is, can a player develop a high level of intelligence, and how can they do that?
No, of course you can. You know, and if you listen to that episode with Dr. Scott, one of the things that he identified was that, you see, there are certain things that certain people are born with, right? And this might also be tied to genetics and some of all these things, right? There are certain things that you are born with as an athlete. There are other people that might not have it. And of course, a classic example that keeps coming up and down is the Messi and Ronaldo debate, right? You see things that Messi does with ease. You see things that Ronaldo does, and you can tell that it's through the work that he has put in over time, right? One of the easiest ways for you to ensure that you are constantly increasing your intelligence is that you have to be a student of the game. You have to be a student of the game. There is absolutely no way that you are increasing your intelligence, because basically what your intelligence is that in the moment of a particular game, you not only know what to do, you know when to do it, and you know how to do it, right? Every footballer, right? Whether you play as a defender, you play as a midfielder, you play as a striker, everybody can pass the ball, right? Let's use three. let's use through pass as an example. So you have a striker who is on the shoulder of the last defender, and you need to give that person a through ball, right? Yes, you know how to give the through ball. Do you know when to give it? And do you know why you are giving it? That's where intelligence comes in, right? And that's where you see certain players or certain footballers being talked about, and it's like they just have a deep understanding of the game. They know not only what to do, they know when to do it, and they know how to do it as well. You cannot trump that without putting in the time to study your sport, being a student of the game. If I ask anybody in your community now, and I said, what position do you play? Say you play, for example, as a right back. If I list two of the best right backs in the history of the game, and I tell you to tell me a student of your game. You're not a student of football.
Yes, sir.
You're just playing football to have fun, because that is your own position. That's the position where you're supposed to be excelling at, right? And you can't tell me the things that stand those particular players out, because those are the best that have ever played that position.
Play the game.
It starts with you being a student of the game. You cannot. There is no way that you are escaping that. Studying the game in detail, watching players in your position. So, for example, I put out something on my Instagram handle at the start of the World Cup. And I said, if you're a young footballer and your dream is one day to play at the World Cup, ensure that you're not watching this World Cup as a fan, right? Everyone's shouting about how interesting it is. Oh, the World Cup is so fun. You cannot be one of the people that are saying that. If your goal is to get to the World Cup, it is the perfect showcase for you to study your game to so much detail. This player that plays my position, this is what they did wrong. This is what they did right.
Yes, sir.
This guy has become the best player at the World Cup in this position because he was able to do this, he was able to do that. I mean, everyone is shouting about Julian Alvarez, right? Okay, apart from the goals that he has scored, tell me 2 or 3 things that he has done right at this World Cup. Will you be able to say that in detail? As opposed to he scored 2 goals against Croatia. He scored this goal against... We're not talking about that.
Yeah, goals. What else?
Right? There is no way you do that without being a student of the game.
You're not a student of a game. Wow. It's just like you are in our community right now, because right from when the community was created last year, we've always told our community, especially the aspiring players, because we have a mixed community, we have coaches in the community, we have agents and scouts in the community also. We've always told the aspiring players that never ever watch the game with the mind of a fan, because you will miss out a lot of details. And we always tell them that in every game you're watching, always in your position of play, watch the 2 teams, those playing in that particular position, and watch out the person that stands out in those games. So it's just like you're just re-echoing and reaffirming that belief, and it's so amazing, sir. Thank you very much for that. It's wonderful. Then I'll going forward, sir, because I was reading about you online and I saw a story. I really don't know how true it is, but it's that is why you are here, and I believe you're going to make a clarification on that. That at the age of 21, you traveled to London for a football trial, but the game didn't last up to 5 minutes because of a recurring new injury that halted your football career before coming back, and you continue on your law firm. So I want to know how the story went from the horse's mouth, and how you were able to handle such a dilemma. Imagine traveling down to London, 5 minutes, and the career is done for. How were you able to cope with all this, and how were you able to mentally stay on your feet? And here you are, still impacting the lives of many upcoming grassroots players. Huh?
Well, that's a little bit of it's a multifaceted question. I mean, like you, obviously, I also wanted to play the game, and that was the goal, that was the dream. I not only had the resources, but the talent was also there. But this is also where an understanding of how the game works comes in, but that's later. So there was a particular match that I played, which was a few months before I traveled, where I got injured, right? There was a guy who ran into my knee, and it was unlike any injury that I had ever had up until that point. I mean, I had sprained ankles, you had muscle tears, you had all of those things, which, are a little bit normal. But this one was kind of different. Unfortunately, as at that time, you did not have any doctors in Nigeria, right, who could fix ACLs, so your anterior cruciate ligament. And if you know anything about sports injuries and football injuries, that's the worst injury that you can ever have. Your anterior cruciate ligament tearing, because that is literally the lifeline of mobility sports. So sports where you're not running in a straight line, your ACL is just a key. So unfortunately, I did not know that I torn my ACL in my knee. The swelling in the knee went down over time, right? And which coincided with when I was graduating from university. So obviously the plan was, when you're done with uni, do whatever it is you wanted to do. That was the plan I had with my parents, right? So you want to be a footballer? No problem. Go to school when you're done. Do all that you want to do. And I was like, okay, fantastic. I'll keep, because I was good. I didn't have any problem with that, because it was never going to be a talent issue. Unfortunately, that injury happened just as I was graduating. So I had lined up certain trials that I was going to go for the minute I graduated. Unknown to me, that injury was worse than it was. So the first trial that I went for, right, I came in as a substitute in that game. And I mean, I think it was maybe it was the first touch of the ball or the first pass or something. The knee literally gave way, right? And the coach at the time, the coach of that team, was telling me that, is it that you have a dead leg or something? And I was like, I have absolutely no idea what happened, because I cannot even run. So next day, I go and see a doctor in the UK who tells me that not only is your ACL torn, you have what they call knee bruising. So your ACL. So if this is how your knee is, right? Just as an example. So this is your thigh, this is your knee. So your ACL is more or less what keeps this together, right? In terms of you turning and doing all of those things. So the minute this is gone, your thigh bone and your leg bone are literally resting on each other. So I had what was called bone bruising, because there was nothing, there was no tendon, there was no ligament there, that was more or less like cushioning the effects. And of course, the guy was like, there's no way I play football again except you have surgery. But because your knee is so bad, we're going to do the surgery and we're going to see how it goes, right? So I did the surgery. I did part of my rehabilitation there. It was time to come back to Nigeria. There were no physios in Nigeria at the time who could do ACL rehabilitation, because it's a specialty on its own. Luckily for me, there was a physio. I interviewed her on the podcast as well. We still keep in touch. Who was returning from Dubai. She had just finished a course on ACL reconstruction surgery. So obviously she was also coming back to Nigeria, and she was like, who am I going to work with? I was just coming back from the UK, and of course it was like more or less like exactly, match made in heaven. But unfortunately, the knee was so damaged that it was. I mean, I tried to make a comeback, but I would have needed multiple surgeries to have had to make it work. And at that point, it just wasn't worth the time. So how did I handle that? Prior to deciding that I wanted to play, one of my plans was always to go into coaching. Right? I'd always known that from the get-go, that I always wanted to go into coaching. And this is where having a plan, like a detailed plan, comes in. So that if part of the plan doesn't work out, you either look for ways to adjust, or you move on to something else in the plan. Now, it would have been very easy for me at that time, like a lot of footballers do, to reduce my age, right? Very, very easy, right? Because I did not look anything. If at that point in time I told people that I was 13, they would probably have believed me, right? Because even now, people still think that I'm in my 20s and I'm, maybe like in my early 20s or something, just because of the way I look. But because I had a plan, and my plan wasn't fully or totally dependent on playing, it was easy for me to switch and go into coaching, so that all the things that I had learned in that process, all the things that I had, garnered, all the experience, all the, the coaches that I had worked with, all of those guys, it was then easy for me to pour that knowledge into all those who were coming behind and say, okay, this is how you should do it. This is how you should do it. This is how you should do it. So don't do this. So the only struggle mentally that was there was, when you see people that are not as good, as you.
As you.
You know, doing that, you know, there tends to be a little bit of that frustration where like, man, if only, you know, this was me. But you quickly recalibrate, and of course you get yourself to focus on what is important.
Wow. It's amazing that you've actually gone through this, and using this experience to impart the general public is wonderful, because we're going to come to the parents part of this as we'll talk about it. But also I would like us to talk about the social media, because it's very, very important. And we cannot really deny the impact that the social media is having in the world, even in the profession at large. So how can we, because the social media is so large that we got connected through the social media. The social media is so large that my first appointment to work with Open Soccer Trials LSC in New York actually came via LinkedIn. So I would really want to know, what are some strategies, because for me, I believe that the reason why most players have not been scouted is because of lack of visibility. They have not seen you. Nobody knows you exist. You're in a forest or a village that no scout might ever go there. So you are hiding in a space. So the social media is one place that can actually reveal what you can do. So what are the strategies that grassroots players can really apply to utilize the social media effectively to gain visibility and discovery?
So that's a very good question, in the sense that you see, there's something, one prayer or one aspiration that a lot of athletes, you know, footballers alike, always have, is the opportunity to have a level playing field, right? The opportunity to have a level playing field. And one of the best ways that you can have a level playing field is through social media. So there's one thing that as an athlete you have to master, especially when you're a grassroots athlete, right? You have to master the ability to sell your talent. Like you rightfully said, you know, there's no scout that is going to come to, you know, one village somewhere or one corner somewhere to come and watch you and all of that. So if that scout is not going to be able to do that, one thing that you should then be able to do is to be able to sell your talent. And that is a skill. But you see, we are in this day and age where a lot of people always like this mystique thing, right? Where you are, which word can I use? Where you're like a dark figure, so to speak. Like, for example, you go to, you know, certain athletes, they'll message me, I'll go to their page. Not only don't they have any posts on their page, their picture is not on their profile. Then they have all these mystical quotes and mystical messages and all of that. What message is that trying to send across? Or what message are you trying to pass across? Right? You know, I was reading the story of this guy that Don Jazzy signed, Bayani, right? And how it was Don Jazzy that actually reached out to him first. So the guy had posted some of his mixtapes.
His video, yes, I once saw, yes, sir.
Yeah. And the judge reaches out to him and say, "Hey, I like your music, keep it up, keep up the good work." Now imagine if that guy was, you know, posting mystical stuff, cartoon characters, all of these funny things. How would he have gotten to where he is today? So social media is a leveler, because there can be anybody anywhere in the world that can see what you're doing, right? And say, this is somebody that I want to take a chance on. And the other mistake that a lot of people make, a lot of footballers and athletes also make, is that they think that your ability to play your sport is the only requirement. It is only an entry into the door. If you lack character, if you lack attitude, if you lack so many of these things, despite the fact that you can play, you're never going to get there. And that's why you will see some coaches who, even though that particular player is not the best player in that position on that team, they will always find their way into the team.
Want to use them.
They'll always find their way into the team. And you that you're on the outside, you're wondering, like, why is it that this guy always plays? It's certainly not because of his ability to play, right? But there are so many other factors at play. There's a perfect example that I can use. Thomas Muller for Germany, right? Yes, he's one of the best players off the ball, but he has been in the German national team since he was like 17 or 18. And the guy is like 30-something now, right? So he has been there for over 15 years. And the Germans have such highly talented players, but he will still always make the team. Why?
Yes, sir.
Would it be leadership qualities? Could it be because of his attitude? Could it be because of his character? So when you're using social media, you are showcasing yourself. You're not just showcasing your ability to play. You are also showcasing yourself as an individual, right? Are you likable? Are you showing things outside of sports that you're doing that would get somebody to like you and say, this person, I like this person. So if this person can then play, added advantage. But what you see day in, day out with a lot of these athletes is, you know, whether it's lack of education, whether it's lack of lawyer, I don't know, but this mystique idea where you want to be a mysterious figure on social media and you think that, you know, people are going to be digging. I mean, I get so many messages. The minute I click on your profile and I see that, you know, there's nothing sports related, there's nothing that, I mean, I just tune out. You won't even get a response.
Yeah,
you are going to be stressing me by many of the things that you're going to be asking and all of those things. If you're not knowledgeable enough to post stuff on your page of what you do that tells me that you are an athlete, this is kind of the level of talent that you have, this is kind of the skill that you have. If you can't post that, then you're not ready, you're not even started.
Wow. But can you just give some of these athletes some tips on how to redeform their social media to reflect it, like tips on how, okay, what you ought to post, what you ought to ignore, what you ought to share? Because yesterday a player actually went to, I don't know if you know Team Nigeria UK.
Yes.
Mr. David Doherty. So we are friends on Facebook. So a player went to his one of his posts and was making a complaint that they're not scouting grassroots, that are just looking at the top players. So when I saw the post, when I saw the comments, I was a little pissed off. Then I just went to check the player's profile. So I over this month I checked a period of 1 month what he has been posting for the period of 1 month, and for the period of 1 month he has posted over 200 posts, and none reflects him as a player. All he was busy sharing some comics, some stuff that does not relate, some pros, just sharing random stuff. So I've noticed that that is something that has been predominant in most players. They are very jokingly about their social media. So how can they redeform it? How can they transform their social media to reflect professionalism even at a grassroots level?
No, so I mean it's easy. Look, let's not, you know, we always like things that appear to be complicated. You know, so I've had players who have, or athletes, let me use athlete, not players, who have, you know, reached out to me, you know, wanting to work with me and all of that. When I tell them some of the things they're supposed to do, it's almost like they don't believe. Like as if it's supposed to be more, like as if it's supposed to be more complicated than that.
Complicated than that.
Right? And you see, the reason for that is because of the general notion that people have had for years that if the solution is not complicated, then it means that it doesn't work. That's a fallacy, right? The whole idea is that if somebody cannot explain, I mean, look at how we've been talking now. If somebody cannot explain something to you like he's talking to an 11-year-old or a 12-year-old, it means that person doesn't understand it enough themselves.
Doesn't understand it.
Right? So the first thing is to get rid of that mentality that it has to be some complicated, sophisticated social media strategy. It absolutely is not. The easiest and the most defined way is I stumble on your page, immediately I can tell that you're an athlete and I can tell the sport that you play. That's the starting point, right? Starts with that. Not all this, I have to go and create content, and then people now start talking about, I don't have the phone to do it, or I don't have this to do. No. First things first, I stumble on your page. Can I tell that you're an athlete? And can I tell what sport that you play? That's the first thing. If we have scaled that hurdle, right, the next thing you then want to do is, to a certain extent, you want to be able to expose your abilities in your sport and your ability as a person, right? Yes, it's you can deceive people, right? In terms of you appear to be a nice person on social media, but you're actually not. All of those will eventually get found out. That's not difficult, right? A coach invites you based off of what they see or what they saw on social media, and they say, I like this guy, he looks like a jovial person, right? they invite you for a trial or they invite you for a camp, within 1 day or two, they'll be able to tell whether what you portray on social media is actually who you are or not. But the point is that you are starting with that. Show us a little bit of your personality, right? Show us your abilities in your sport. So maybe there's a clip from the game that you played, whether you recorded it with your phone or whatever it is, right? Post a little bit of that. Let's see it, right? Let's see the type of person you are away from your sport in terms of, okay, yes, normal surroundings, normal things that you do, things that are away from sport. Give us that type of inclination. It's not complicated. If you start with that, you can then progress to, you know, all those collaborations and some of those, but don't even be thinking about that yet. Start with the basic things. We stumble on your page, we can see that this is what you do, this is the sport that you play. You progress a little bit beyond that, we see a little bit of your ability in your sport, and then you kind of give us an inclination of who you are.
Wow, this is as simple as it can ever get. This is very, very simple and straight to the point. And just like what you said, this actually brings us to that fact that every player needs a profile. You cannot be a player, just like what you talked about, having mystical stuffs. You cannot be a player, and what you are seeing as a profile picture is a motivational quote. What you are seeing is a tiger, object, or maybe your girlfriend. No, it doesn't tell all that you're a player. It changes the idea entirely. So as a player, you should ensure that your profile or your social media is reflecting who you are. That I'm a player. We don't need to ask you. Your profile should tell us. Wow, this is very, very, very important and very simple to understand. Now, in a particular video I watched about that you posted, you were talking about going the extra mile. Going the extra mile is very, very important for grassroots to go the extra mile. As well, you use athletes in general. So bringing down to the grassroots level, what are the practical steps that's because the word sometimes when you use go the extra mile, it sounds motivational to many. They always feel, you know, it's motivational word, but in practical sense, how can they go the extra mile?
Going the extra mile, you know, just like I said with social media as well, is not as complicated as it sounds, right? Going the extra mile literally means that you are devoting extra hours to your craft, right? And you see, the good thing about being a grassroots player is that, quote and unquote, you have time and you have less distractions, right? If there's anything a grassroots player has on his hands, it's time, right? Because you're not playing in any big league. You're not playing where the demand is high. You're not playing where you have obligations away from your sport. I mean, yes, you might be working to make some money and things like that, but one thing you have is time. Every extra hour of your time should be dedicated to your craft, which is this football you're playing. So when we come back to being a student of the game, right? Every feedback that you get from coaches, from teammates, from friends about your game, you are devoting the hours to work on it, right? To improve. That's what going the extra mile means, because what traditionally most players would do is that the minute training is done, they pack their bags, they're going home. The minute the match is done, you played an invitational, you played a tournament, or maybe you played your regional league or something, right? The minute the game is done, pack your bags, you go home, waiting for the next training session. There is never a point in time when, after a training session, you have stayed to do some extra work. After a particular game, you have stayed to do some extra work. In certain instances, you have begged the coaches that please just wait extra 20 minutes with me.
Let's do one more lap. Yes.
Right? Alternatively, you have training in the morning. Training is at 8 a.m. You beg the coach, can I get there at 7? So that at least I can do an hour's worth of work before every other person comes in. Because if you remember what I said earlier, the job of a coach in a team sport is not to improve the individual,
but to improve the team.
So when everybody comes in the team setting, you're not setting to have the time for that specific focus on you, right? But you can do that before training, general team training, or after, when everybody has
training.
That's what I mean by going the extra mile, in the sense that you are putting in extra work for this craft that you're chasing. But you see, what makes it difficult is that you are not going to see immediate results, and that is what a lot of people. You mentioned the podcast that has over 900 episodes. When I started the podcast, barely anyone was listening. Right? There were some episodes that maybe it's only one person that will listen, or two people that will listen, or three people that will listen, right? But I didn't say, because nobody was listening, or because I didn't have hundreds and thousands of people listening, right, I was going to stop. That's part of going the extra mile, right? I still continue.
Okay.
I still continue. So everybody sees it, and I say, oh, wow, 900 episodes. And I'm like, where were you when it was 50 episodes? When it was 100 episodes, when nobody was listening? You know, so the difficulty that these athletes have is that they want the results. If I'm going to go the extra mile, if I'm going to give extra effort, I want to see the results tomorrow. If I don't see the result tomorrow,
I'm not going to give the extra.
I don't think I'm going to continue. That's where the problem is. And you see, the thing with sports again, which is key, is that you cannot start and stop. Because I'll see players who will say, who will say, I've gone the extra mile, I've done extra things. And I say, how long have you done it for? And by the time you probe, you will see that they did it today, they didn't do it tomorrow. They did it next tomorrow, they didn't do it the day after that. So start and stop, start and stop, start and stop. They are never going to build any consistency for it to work. And then you will say that the thing they told you to do doesn't work. Oh, that extra mile thing doesn't work. When you were starting and stopping, and you were never consistent with it.
This is very, very, very critical. And I believe that everybody watching this live is learning a whole lot. And even when because videos like this is not something you just learn once and just go. It's something you rewatch and you watch again and you watch again and you watch again. It's amazing. And we've been talking a whole lot about players. And I've seen your intentional sports parenting framework, and which you've actually identified some of the roles that parents play for their kids to actually go beyond, to perform high and all go to pros and not the rest. So I really want you to tell us how important is the role of the parents in players' development, sir?
Oh, I mean, it's very important. There were these two guys now, their name skips my mind now, that they did an intense study on athletes. So they studied like thousands of athletes over a long period of time. I've forgotten their name. And they came up with 5 major reasons. So there are 5 major reasons why athletes don't make it in sports, right? The 5 of those reasons, they analyze it in detail. And one of those reasons was parental input, right? So if parental input makes it into the list of the 5 reasons why athletes don't make it in sports, then it's pretty important. It's pretty important. So, and the reason it's important, and what I've identified in doing this for the length of time that I've been doing this, is that, you see, the engagement of a child with sports would always start a little bit when they are with their parents, quote unquote, right? So except your parents gave birth to you and literally just threw you out of the door and said, go and fight for yourself or go and sort yourself out, which is not the case with most. It would usually happen under the watch of the parent. Like, let's take a traditional Nigerian now. You know, you're giving birth to, you start growing up. People in the neighborhood are playing football. You know, there's the football you watch on TV, English Premier League, the Spanish League, the World Cup is around. Now, all of your interest in sports is being built whilst you were under the noses of your parents. So, and they have the ability, or they had the ability to either nurture that dream or to kill it, right? And that's where, of course, traditionally you hear parents say, oh, my child can never play sports. It's people that are not serious that play sports. It is this, it is that. And they say all sorts of things, right? So the whole idea is that because of that vantage position that a parent is in, you have the ability to make or break a situation where an athlete who actually enjoys sports, loves sports, wants to play sports, goes on to succeed in that sport. So it's too important. My daughter now, she plays tennis. And the only reason she was able to do that was because I was able to surround her with the sport. And then she developed a love for it.
The love for it.
So that parental input is absolutely important. You can't even mess with it. So
literally, we are expecting the next Serena Williams to come from Nigeria. Wonderful.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
That's what a lot of people call her. But let's see how it goes.
Yes, yes, yes. She's actually she's lucky to have someone that is knowledgeable and especially someone that is very, very exposed. And it is something that most of the Nigerian grassroots players really wish for.
Mm.
In talking about this parental input in the players' development, then how what do you say to grassroots players whose environment is not supportive of this their career pursuit, especially their parents that are not supportive of this career? Just like you said, they deem the profession as a hobby and
Mm.
not something that is responsible. They don't look at, they've not really come to terms that football is as professional as the other professions in the world. So we are having, though we are seeing a change in some parents, like you're already training your daughter in line to become what she dreamed of becoming. But we are still having this problem of lack of support from parents and the immediate environment around players. What can we really tell this set of players that are in such a dilemma?
Now, because of where we come from, right? It's not as easy as saying, abandon your parents and just go and do something else, right? It's not as easy. Now, of course, I mean, in
Yes, sir.
other times, I mean, I've worked with athletes in the US and in Europe, right? And it's very easy for them, to just pack their bags and move out of their house, right? They go and rent their own place and they do their own things to fund their career because they're not getting the support that they want for
Of their
them,
parents.
right? But we're Africans. Our orientation and our upbringing is quite different. And there was an episode on the podcast that I did on what to do if you don't have the support of your parents or your coaches. So it's a tough one, but you see, the first thing is that communication angle where at least you try to convince them, right? Not only that you know what you are doing, but that you have thought it all the way through. You understand? The worry for parents with that mentality is that if this doesn't work out, what then happens? Right? That's usually the thought process. If this doesn't work out, what then happens? So if you're showing them that you have thought it all the way through, that this doesn't work out, this is what I'm going to do. That doesn't work out, this is what I'm going to do. Or this is the whole plan. When I'm done with this is what I would then do. When I'm done with this is what, showing that you are not, because for most parents, their ideology or their thought process is that their children are just in the euphoria, right, of this sports thing. That it's not something that is serious or will go far or whatever. So in order to show them that you are not caught up in that euphoria, you show them that you've thought out the whole thing, right?
Yes.
I'm not just trying to be the next Messi. I'm not just trying to be the next Ronaldo because it will be easy to do so. This are the things that I have done. This is the ability that I have. This is what I can do with this. And if this doesn't work out, this is also the plan. This is also what I can do. Now, if you have done all of that, right, and they are still not buying into that dream, then the next thing is to show them to an extent that you can do it without them, right? Obviously, not disrespecting or trying to throw them to the side or anything, but that, look, with the limited amount of support and the limited amount of resources that you have given me, this is what I have been able to do. This is what I've been able to accomplish. So imagine what will happen if I then have your
If there is,
right?
yes, sir.
If after that point they are still not on board, then the decision has to be yours to let them know categorically that this is the path. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it regardless of the support that you give me. Because don't forget that at this point, you have given them multiple opportunities. And I truly believe that it is except that parent truly doesn't want what is good for that child. If you have followed these steps, right? If you have followed these steps, it will get to the point where they would be like, okay, no problem. Let's even see what will happen.
Yeah.
Even if it means, even if it means them saying, "I told you so," if it doesn't work out. But except that parent is just wicked, except that parent just doesn't want what is right for that child. If they have followed those things, that parent should come on board. But what you will see with a lot of people or a lot of footballers is that it's always war. You always want to fight them. you have to support me no matter what, or it's because of you I'm not making progress. When you make it confrontational like that, you are not going to get any support from them, right? Because from the get-go, you're already fighting. So what is motivating what's motivating them to say, okay, let me now support you, right? It's more or less a case of, okay, because you now want to be rebellious, I will now find a way to help you with this thing. So if you follow the steps that are outlined, right, and they still don't come on board, then that decision is yours to say, hey, I'm going to do this with or without you. Even if it means me moving out of the house, it won't be because I want to. It will be because the environment is no longer conducive to thrive at this thing or to succeed. I want to go for training. Say, no, I can't go. I have to stay at home. How exactly am I supposed to improve in the sport when I can't do that? But obviously, you know at that point that your destiny is in your own hands. So if it means that you have to rent a place, if it means that you have to, you know that you are the one doing all of that. So you can't come back later and be saying, oh, it's because my parents didn't support me. No. You have made that decision now to take your destiny into your own hands, and you are the one that's right with it.
Whoa. Really wish someone told me all this back then, because my mom was really my mom was literally against football. Like, I'm funny enough, I'm a coach's son. My dad is a football coach, and we have to date, me and my dad has not really sat down to really talk about football. It's very, very funny, but being a child of a coach, and my dad's career ended even before with injury. So that actually changed my mom's mindset about sports, especially football. In fact, she even categorically told me that if I was going to be a footballer, she was going to disown me. So I had to go to school first. So it was that terrible. So the part was I have to go to school first before I would think of anything. I graduated last year, but right here, immediately during my graduation, actually I had to come to that point where I had to do reality check and ask myself, man, can you really go on to be pro at this age again? So that was when the idea of starting up Homo Bowlers came in, and I began this journey in Homo Bowlers. And so far, they've seen the passion I have for the game, and they've been very, very supportive. They've been very, very supportive, just like you mentioned. They've been very, very supportive over this period. And it's very, very wonderful to have their support, because most of these jerseys of Homo Bowlers you see is from my mom got them for us. So it's so it's cool. But also still on this, because you know that football is time bound. It's not like most professions that you can become a singer today and tomorrow you're an engineer. You can also, from engineer, you can go on to become a banker. From there, you can do transition, run some careers for 4 different transitions. But football is age limited, just like dancing. The career have a lifeline, a time limit. And in today we see the likes of, I wrote some things down, like Harvey Elliott of Liverpool. He made his debut at the age of 18. Mbappe made his debut at the age of 15. Elliott, Haaland, 16. I think Pele. All of these guys made their professional debut at a very, very young age. Coming down to Africa, Nigeria especially, at the age of 18, the child is expected to be at the university, not a football academy. So it is just like what they told you, finish up first with school. When you come back, then you start pursuing the career. But before you finish, coupled with the way Nigeria is, strike and all the rest, before you know, you're already 22, coming out of the school. And 22, when you ought to be playing at least semi-pro level or even at the pro level, that is when you're coming back again to start learning the basics of football. And I believe this is what gives room to the age lie we are seeing in Africa. Many of them 30 claiming 25, because when they were supposed to be learning, they were in school. So what can you really point out in this? Because it's a major problem that has hindered many. Though with the best intentions that parents have, they have the best intention for their children. They want, just like what you said, if this doesn't work out, then what's next? But we've seen that this trend, this path has not really worked out for so many players that are really pursued. If you go through this route of primary, secondary, university before academy, the chances of you going pro is very, very slim. compared to those that went through an academy from their young age.
Mhm.
Though being an academy is not a guarantee that you go pro, but the difference is very, very clear. So what really can you say concerning this subject matter, sir?
You see, it's all education, and this is also one of the reasons why I work with the parents now in identifying that. You see, there is not, if I take away the injury component for me, say my ACL, and if I knew all the things I know now, then I would easily have studied law and I would have still gone on to play professional football. Easy, right? It's all about education and understanding how the sport works. And you see, that's why at the start I said, look, you have to master the mental, you have to master the physical, you have to master the business angle of sports. Mastering the business angle is you understanding how the sport works. What do I mean? Now, we've seen situations now. Recently, there was this Brazilian guy that Real Madrid signed, right? And
yes, from Palmeiras, something like that.
And he's not going to join the team until he's 18 years old in 2024, right?
2024.
So literally,
2024, yes, sir.
What they've done is that they have identified a talent. They have realized they cannot sign this talent, but because we have an idea of the potential that he potentially has, we will pay for him now, even though we are going to get him later, right? So the whole idea while you are in school is how relevant can you be in the sports ecosystem, to the point that when you graduate and when you finish school, you already have people saying the only reason we have not signed this guy is because he had to go to school.
Because he's in school.
Right? He had to go to school.
Yes, sir.
He had to be in school. But you see, what a lot of people do, which obviously is also one of the mistakes that I made because I was overly reliant on talent, is that because you're in school, you lock yourself in that school ecosystem, right? Just because they say go to school first. It is when you are done with school that you now want to get yourself back into
again
the sports ecosystem. When you now find out how things work, you now want to reduce your age to compensate for that. So it's all education and understanding how the sport works. There is nothing that says that while you're in school, you cannot have invitationals with academies where you spend a certain amount of time. Hey, I'm in school. I can't be here full time, but I can be here part time, right? I join you guys on weekends. I join you guys when I have holidays. I join you guys when I have spare time. You are more or less ensuring that you are known in that ecosystem.
Yes, sir.
So if anybody is asking you as a 21-year-old that why is it that you have no time for a professional team, you have reasons. And not just reasons that are flimsy, reasons that you can back up, reasons that you can support. And I see this happens all the time. You see all these guys in Europe, right, who are 14, 15. I mean, look at Mbappe's story. He had trials with Chelsea. He had trials with Arsenal. He had trials. There was literally no big club in Europe that he didn't have a trial with, right? What happened? Even after the trial, he went back to France. Right?
Yes, sir.
He went back to France.
Yes, sir.
It was all
France,
later on that he now signed for Monaco, and of course, everything there began to go. He remained relevant in the ecosystem, even though he wasn't signing anybody yet. Right? So the whole idea that, oh, you cannot go to school and still play football is absolutely not true. Would it be hard? Yes. But that's what you have signed up for. So this idea that it has to be easy, it has to be a walk in the park, is something that you have to eliminate from your mindset completely. Right? There was there's a guy that I was coaching who is now in the US. Right? And one of the things that I told him, I said, look, when you are a student athlete, right? So which means that you have to go to school before your parents will allow you to play sports. You are only concerned with two things within that period, which is school and sports. You don't have time for friends. You don't have time to socialize. You don't have time for any of all those things because, quote and unquote, they are distractions. You will get back to them later, right? But because your time is limited, and of course you don't have all the wiggle room in the world, those are the only two things you can focus on. You focus on school, you focus on your sports. That's it. So literally from class to field, from field to class, rest, eat, field to... That's the only way that you will make it work. But what you see with a lot of people is that when you tell them this is what they must do, right? They are already looking at how boring their life is going to be. So the question is, do you really want to make this work? Or are you looking at having an interesting life where you can hang out with friends, you can have parties, you can do... Am I saying you can't do all those things? That's not what I'm saying. But the point is,
Yes, sir.
where does your priority have to be to ensure that you make it work? So, of course, it's still very possible.
Woo, man, this is wow. In other words, even in school, you can still be relevant in the ecosystem, in the sports ecosystem. Never heard of this and never thought of it ever. This is why knowledge is very, very powerful. And being in platforms like this actually exposes you to some knowledge, and knowledge like this will actually accelerate, reduce your error rates in life, especially in the sports industry. But the community have learned a lot, and going just like what Con Daniel just saying, very interesting. It's correct. This section has been very, very interesting. So it's already over an hour, and I know you initially told me you are having a meeting by 3 p.m. So definitely you'll be preparing for that meeting also. So going into the last question I will have for today is, going into 2023, sir, what will be your message for our community going into 2023?
So just two things, right? Number one is intentionality and a better understanding of how football works. I have footballers who message me and say things like, they want to play for Manchester United, they want to play for Arsenal, they want to play for... That is a clear sign. When I see people that message me and say things like that, that's a clear sign that you don't understand how football works, right? You don't understand. And funny enough, I have a course. It's just that, I don't have time. So what I used to do then was that every footballer who enrolled in the course, then I would then, at the end of the course, I would then coach you personally and all of that. But I haven't done it in a while. So it's called Football Mastery, right? Where you learn the mental, physical, and business aspects of football, particularly the business side of football, right? If you're a grassroots footballer in Nigeria today, if you're over the age of 18, because obviously one of the things that you should even know is that you cannot sign for any club abroad if you're under the age of 18. It is illegal, right? So when you're reducing your age, you reduce your age, you say you are now 16, you cannot sign for any club abroad because it's against FIFA rules, right? So it means that you have just changed yourself like another 2 years up until the point when you get when you get to the age of 18, right? Then even when you get to the age of 18, your ability to sign for any club in Europe is work permit dependent. So which means that you have to get a work permit. And the higher the league you are planning to go, the more stringent the work permit is. So when you say, oh, I want to play in this country, I want to play in that country, except you have a foreign passport, you're not playing in that country anytime soon. So that shows that you don't understand how football works. So what you should be doing is you should be plotting a graph based off of your understanding. Is to be plotting a graph that allows you gradually rise up until the point when you get that ultimate dream of playing wherever it is that you want to play. So you have to be more intentional. That's one. All this haphazard, doing things scattered, no direction, everything has to be intentional. And there's an example that I give, right, which is the example of Michael Phelps. I mean, everybody should know who Michael Phelps is. The greatest Olympian, most successful Olympian ever, right? And this is a guy who, when he was preparing for the Athens Olympic Games in 2004, he trained. Now, forget, he had access to facility, he had access to this, he had access to... Leave all of that. He trained consecutively for 5 years, every single day. He did not miss a single training. So I'm talking Monday to Sunday. He was in the place for 5 years.
Good years.
In the build up to the Athens Olympic Games. So which means from 1999 up until that 2004, he was in the pool every day for 5 years. You can't beat that type of intentionality.
Oh, no way.
Right? You can't. So everybody sees him now and say, oh, most successful Olympian, most this, most that. You don't know the backstory, right? So you can't beat that level of intentionality. So that's the first thing. You have to be intentional. So this idea that, you can just do as you like and you will still succeed. You're just wasting your time. You might as well just go and do something else and not even continue. So you have to be intentional. That's the first thing. After that intentionality, you then have to ensure that you understand how the sport works. What understanding that you have of how the sport works, plot your graph for me.
What works,
right? And it all starts with that's your understanding, right? So those are the two things: intentionality, properly understand,
and better understanding of how the game works.
How the game works. Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
Wow. This has been an amazing section. Tola, I'm really, really grateful. I'm really, 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 really grateful. Gracias. Thank you very, very much for this wonderful moment. We wish to see you soon. And when we are coming back next, we want to have more testimonies to share with you how these tips you actually shared with us has helped to transform the life of players, has also helped to change the perspective of parents, has also helped to accelerate the growth process and development of these players. Thank you for being in the Hops community and in the Hops platform. We wish to see you soon. Thank you very much, sir, and stay blessed, sir.
Thank you
Thank you
for
very
having
much.
me. All right.